We're holding Sanhedrin Chelek, Preke Chelek, page 103, the second side. Let me show you the page here. Okay. Hey, Barbara. Okay, so we're holding over here. Amr Eish Lakish. Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Reb Shimon ben Lakish said as follows. What does it mean by the verse in Yoav, in Eov? Vayimana merishayim oiram uzroya rama tishaber. And he will withhold their light from the wicked, and the high arm will be broken. So the question is, in the word merishayim, the Gemara asks, Mipnei ma ayin shel rishayim tluya. In the actual writing of Job, the ayin, the letter ayin from the word rishayim is elevated. And if you just read the letters without the word ayin, it's from the word rashim, which means poverty. So the Gemara says like this. What does it mean, vayimna mirash oyrim, that they take away their light? So it says, kiven shenasa adam rash milmata. It's a Gemara. Person who becomes poor, you can see the commentaries what it means, poor. Below is nasa rash milmaila. That person is above as well. Certain inner, and just like basically like Rashi is in this, that if people don't like you here, you know, if a person doesn't like you here in this world, it could be a sign people don't like you. You're not a likable person. It could be it's a sign in other situations in heaven as well. Okay, I see here possibly if there's any problem with the internet, please let me know by WhatsApp. Okay, so Rashi says, what does it mean, Ayin Shebirishayim? It says, Ksuva Beshita Oisis in the writing of it, it has basically the ayin is elevated. So if you take away the ayin, it looks like the word is saying Rushim, as in poor people. That poor people's light is taken away from them. So the Gemara explains, Kivan, Rish Lakish says, that Kivan Shnas Adim Rash Milmata, a person who becomes poor or disliked, poverty, lacking of things, this of down here in this world, which means Rashi says, you have a lot of enemies and not pleasant. People don't find you pleasant. And people don't, that's an expression used, people don't find you pleasant. People are interested in befriending you. The person finds that about themselves. It's a sign that Nasa Rosh Mamayla. A person should know. This is a very hard Gemara, that they hate you as well. They dislike you up in heaven. The Hachi Kasiv, Rashim Shnei Mini Rishus. That's why it says Rashim, two places, the plural. You're Rush, you're sort of say poor in you're socially poor in this world because you're socially poor in the world above as well. Now, commentaries that say the Ein Yaakov says, so this is what Rashi says. Rashi says that in the Yad Ramah, also Rashim from the word leader, a person who becomes a boss, so to say, or a politician. So people don't like they don't love as well. He says the Yad Ramah says that's people of leadership. The Ein says that what does it mean? Who's a rich person? You're saying this is a poor person. Who's a rich person? Someone who's happy with their lot. So someone who's very depressed and not happy in life. So that your poverty in your mindset. So if you're poor in your mindset, so God also doesn't like it. That why don't you have a positive attitude? Like it says that you have to have light and simcha. You want light, you have to have simcha. Okay. Aaron and Barbara, is the stream coming in okay? Ariel, do you hear it?
Yes, so far it's okay, Rabbi.
Yes, I can hear. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so Rashi says here he brings down the says there are most sites of variant reading. Once a person assumes leadership on earth below, he is deemed wicked above. He explains that this is because power corrupts. So power corrupts people, so therefore God doesn't like people who take power. Therefore, the ayin is suspended as below he is a leader, resh, and above not hold true for those who inherit their prominence. In other words, the kings of Judah, but only for those prominence on their own. It means if you're who's born into like this Judah, we're going to see for both David and Nehemiah needed to be. The Rambam's commentary mission offers similar explanation. We're going to see in a second that there's two exceptions to the rule. One is David, and one is Nehemiah. The Gemara says, so why do we have the ayin at all? If we lift the ayin up, talking about people that are poor, disliked in this world, enemies in this world, like Rashi learns, that you have enemies that you're hated above also. So there's take out the ayin. So Rabbi Yehoiakim and Rabbi Elazar Chadam, one says in the Kvoid Shel David, to respect David, I mean to say though David had enemies, as Rashi, or David was a leader, right? So you would think that he was also hated above. That's why we keep the ayin in there to say it's not talking about, it's only talking about David was not wicked, although he had enemies, although he was a leader, etc. Another one says, the Nehemiah who came back he was part of the team of Ezra, the book of Nehemiah, to build the second temple. He also is a leader. He was also had to exercise discipline, as we learn in the book of Nehemiah. It was difficult, so therefore we have to make an exception that he's also one of those people that are hated above, although he was tough and had to do what he had to do, but God knew that that's what he had to do. Okay, so he says, Rashi says, ayin cloud. Just take the ayin out. If it's ayin, if we get the ayin to show that it's talking about anyone who's, let's say Rashi's explanation, everyone who's hated in this world, it means he's hated above. So just leave the ayin. So the Gemara answers, one answer is Mishum Kvoid Shel David, is as a way of honoring King David. She'ein hadavar noihig b'tzadikim, but David hoyle senim arba. That you have to know it's not just David, but any righteous person. Just because a person has enemies, David had a lot of enemies. Anyone who reads the book of Tehillim, of Psalms, sees David doesn't stop talking about his enemies. So David is full of enemies. Although David has a lot of enemies, Achitofel, Doeg, whatever, so he nevertheless, it's not a sign that God hates him. The tzaddik, or if he assumed leadership, he was the first of the kings of David. So it's not a sign on righteous people that if they have enemies that God hates them. Nehemiah ben Chachloi is also famous Nehemiah. He also had many enemies. This is according to the opinion of Rashi that if a person has enemies in this world, it should be a sign that means if you want to just take it in a little bit of perspective. A person may say sometimes, I don't care if no one likes me, That's the Gemara basically saying is you should care. If you're not pleasant to people, maybe you're not it's not the people's problem. Maybe you have to look inwardly and see what's where you could examine change within yourself. So Nehemiah also had a lot of enemies. Minochrim, who is his enemy? So there's different opinions. One is the Gentiles, because Nehemiah came back. You have to remember, after the destruction of the first temple, especially after the exile tribes, the Assyrians, the Sanhedrin put in the Shamronim. They were people today, very small people today, but once upon a time, the Shamronim were the people that were put in Shamron. Shamron is north. That the 10 tribes, they filled the people there, and they put in another nation. So those Shamronim, when the south was exiled in the first temple, so they kind of felt the whole Eretz Yisrael belonged to them. Nehemiah comes back with the power of the king of Persia, who ruled the space then of Bavel, right? So they took over whatever Bavel ruled now the Persians ruled, like we learn in the story of Purim, right? Achashverosh is Yehoiakim Kush. So his descendants, Achashverosh's descendants, whether it's Horish and it's Daryavish, they sent Nehemiah, said he could go back and build a temple. And these people weren't happy. The Nachrim, the Gentiles that lived in Eretz Yisrael, that were in the north, they were enemies of Nehemiah. We learn about it. Shemvakshim Laharge, they wanted to kill Nehemiah. Nehemiah came in with soldiers. Ezra came with the Nehemiah came in with armaments of Persian to protect of the Persian temple. Al Shahai Beis Hamikdash, because he was building the Beis Hamikdash in the book of Ezra. Because there's some people that have Ezra and Nehemiah as one sefer. And like it says, V'achas mechazekes hashlach, that with one hand they were building the walls around Jerusalem because they had a fortified Jerusalem. There was no walls. So the first thing they had to do is build walls around Jerusalem to fortify it. On the other hand, they had to hold a sword, because if they would just hold the hammer, then the enemy killed them. So while they were holding the sword with one hand to protect against the enemies, they were trying to build the walls to protect the people in Jerusalem. Says he had enemies of the Gentiles. He had the Jewish people who were jealous of him. Like it's brought down there, people that were sworn to him. He cost ben Arach Shaim Vazra. It symbolizes over there basically that he had an enemy within the Jewish people itself. You remember Nehemiah and Ezra, they didn't just come in and say, "Okay, Chaver, let's build the second Beis Hamikdash." They wanted to. Ezra made them, the Jewish people, reconnect to the Yiddishkeit, to their connection to Torah. He made a bris sanama. He made a covenant to the people, like Moshe made a covenant with the Jewish people before they went to Eretz Yisrael. Ezra made a covenant. He made the people who were intermarried had to get rid of their Gentile wives. So because that wasn't pleasant for some people, so he had enemies, and those who didn't want to listen to Ezra, Nehemiah again was there with the soldiers. Therefore, we have to say that the reason we keep the ayin is to teach us that only the wicked people, it's a sign that they're hated by God, but the people that are not wicked, like David and Nehemiah, so then it's even though they had enemies, it's a sign that what they're doing is wrong. Again, so the lesson we can teach from this Gemara, this is a Gemara that's kind of out of place from what we're talking about. We're talking about the kings, but the idea is basically that if a person is feeling that they're socially not accepted around, maybe it's time to examine a little bit your behavior. Okay, now we're going back to the Gemara. Now is going to get kind of into continuing with the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah that worshipped idols that were complicated personalities, that they had tremendous knowledge in Torah. At the same time, they were angry at God, and they were looking to anger God. And one of them is, some of them are on the list of people that don't have a portion in the world to come. So here the Gemara says like this: Tanur Rabbanan, our rabbis have learned. Menashe, who's the son of Chizkiyahu and the father of Ammon. So we're going to learn about his son as well soon. Menashe Yeshayna Chamishim v'Chamisha Panim Mitzkoyanim. He wasn't just anybody. Menashe wasn't just an ignoramus, a person that had no idea about learning Torah. Again, his father revived Torah in a way that was never done before. It means it says the amount of Torah that Chizkiyahu taught, that we learned, was from there was no part of the Jewish people that didn't know Torah. Now, so therefore, his son Menashe also knew Torah. He was able to teach 55 different ways in Torah's Kohanim. Torah's Kohanim is the third book of the Chumash. The book of Vayikra is called the book of the Kohanim. Why? Because most of Vayikra, that's what we're holding now, deals with the laws that are connected to things that are some way or another connected to the temple and the priests. So he was so versed in Torah that he was able to explain 55 versions of the complicated part of Torah. Keneged Shnei Malchusei. And so there's different opinions of how that went about. That he was king for 55 years, right? He became king at 12. He was king for 55 years. 21 years he was worshiping idols. He was taken into captivity. He did tshuva for 33 years. So he was he had for his 55 years of rule, he was able to learn 55 different ways of Torah. Some people say, it depends how you look at it around, that because he was able to learn Torah 55 ways is why he merited to have 55 years of rule, or that he had, in corresponding to his 55 years, he taught 55 ways of Torah. But that still didn't prevent him from doing horrible things that we learned in that King Menashe did. Achav, we learned about Achav. Remember last week we learned that Achav is the source who teaches us how we're supposed to cut the bread. that when Abaye, I think it was, who said we're going to talk about our colleagues in who don't have a portion in the world to come, Achad came to him in a dream and said, you don't even know how to cut the bread. You're calling me your colleague. So he was able to study 85 different ideas in the complicated parts of Torah's Kohanim. And Yeravam, who we learned about, which is the first king of Israel, he was a student of Achia Shaloni, of the great prophet Achia Shaloni. He himself he learned all the secrets of Torah. Nevertheless, his ego got the better of him, and that did not prevent him from moving the people for his own personal interest to serving idols, because it didn't serve his own agenda for the Jewish people to stay religious to God. And he was able to learn Meyo Shalish, 103 different ideas of Torah, of Torah's Kohanim. So again, we're talking about people that knew how to learn. So Rashi says, what is Torah's Kohanim? Rashi says that's the third book of the book of Chumash, which is the book of Vayikra. What does it mean when the Gemara says that he was shoyna 55 panim, faces in the Torah's Kohanim? That means to say that he was machadish, he was able to teach new ideas. Every year he was able to teach, corresponding to his rule, she gave another shear on the complex laws of Torah's Kohanim. Again, this goes to show you we're dealing with complicated people, that they had tremendous knowledge in Torah, but that didn't prevent them from being angry at God and angry at Judaism. Here he says in the notes, Rabbi Steinsaltz says, Torah Kohanim is an example cited here because it deals with matters relating to the sanctuary. Furthermore, the sages consider Torah Kohanim very difficult material. So this is an example conveys the extent of Torah knowledge of these individuals, that Yeravam, Achav, and Menashe, they weren't just anyone, they were people that knew how to learn very well. It is that erudition in the matters of Torah which explains why they have no share in the world to come. So here the Marsha says this is one of the reasons why they're on the list of people who don't have a share in the world to come, as they committed all the transgressions in full knowledge that they were sinning. They can't claim ignorance. Why? Because they knew how to learn. And nevertheless, that didn't prevent them from serving idols. Here continues, the Rama explains that in his reign lasted that long because of his Torah knowledge. It means the Yad Rama says, why was he king 55 years? Because of his studying of 55 different ideas on Torah's Kohanim in the parts of Vayikra. For each aspect of understanding of Torah's Kohanim, he was privileged to rule for an additional year. So though, according to some opinions we learned last week, not everyone agrees with the Mishnah that we learned. Menashe does not have a portion in the world to come. Although he does have a portion in the world to come, he nevertheless he ruled the longest because of his Torah studies, according to the Yad Rama. Okay, now we're going to go into other peoples in the books of Nevi'im that lived listen, whoever's on the Zoom, you're on mute. If you have a question, please unmute yourself and ask. But otherwise, you're on mute, so it shouldn't disrupt the sound. Okay, so now we're going to learn about other people that we wonder if they're also on the list of people who don't have a portion in the world to come. So it says Tanya, we learned. Rameir used to say, the Rebbe always says that it says in the Gemara, Hoya, like means he would always say. It's like something that Rameir would repeat. Rameir would say, we say Hoya. Others, it's brought out in other ideas, sometimes positive. The idea of Haya Oimer, that it was not something that was said once, but it was something that kind of Rameir lived with. You have to remember, Rameir himself dealt with a complex situation where his Rebbe, his teacher, was a person who himself was a great in Torah. Acher, he's known as Acher, the other, Elisha ben Abo, and the reason, and he left also the path of Torah in the time of the rebellion of Bar Kochva. That it's called the years of the Shmad. So he himself also left the path of Torah. So he was a person, he sort of say, he was traumatized by the idea of people that were kind of great people at the same time. It says about as a person who doesn't have the ability to do tshuva. So Rameir used to say, though Rameir himself was able to effect tshuva for his teacher. That Avshalom ein lech Avshalom, of course, is the rebellious son of King David, right? King David's at the end, eventually, the successor of David was Solomon. But in his lifetime, he had two rebellions of two of his children. One was Avshalom, the well-known story of the rebellion of Avshalom, and then later, at the end of his life, the kind of a rebellion by Adoniyahu. So Rameir used to say that Avshalom ein lechelek l'olam. Avshalom does not have a portion in the world to come. How do you know this? He has a verse to support this idea. Shneimar, as it says, "Vayakos Avshalom vayimisuhu." He was hit and killed him. So he says, "Vayaku ba'olam hazeh." He was hit, so to say, smithed in this world, and when vayimisuhu, then he was l'olam haba, that he doesn't have a portion in the world to come. So Rameir holds that Avshalom is a person, is one of the people that don't have a portion of the world to come. Yeah. So although Tosfos, he quotes Tosfos and Sota that says that there's different opinions of Avshalom. Maybe he didn't go to hell, maybe he did go. There's different opinions of what happened to Avshalom. Hold on a second. Let me bring this down over here. There's a difference of opinions what happened to Avshalom at the end, but according to Rameir, he's not one of the persons who has a portion of the world to come. So but disagree. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Reb Shimon the son of Elazar says that Mishum Rameir, that also he adds that Achaz and Achazia it says about them that neither live nor are sentenced. So they won't live in the world to come, but they won't be sentenced to Gehenna. So they don't go to hell, but they won't live. And who's that? He adds Achaz and Achazia, and anyone else that says that they did bad in the eyes of. Now again, so if you want to just bring down a second, we had over here, let's say, the kings of Israel. It says, when we bring up Achazia and, let's see, who do we have over here? So here we have saying that Achazia is the son of Yehoram, and Achaz is the father of Chizkiyahu, we learned about. So these two kings, Rameir says, and all the other kings that it says about them that he did, so to say, bad in the eye of Hashem. So they don't have a in the world to come. Okay. So it says, what's it mean, Lo Chaim They won't live in the world to come. With other righteous. Same time, and they also, so they don't go to hell. This kind of doesn't where they go, because if they're not going to be in the world to come, they don't go to hell, but they're not going to be part of the world to come. That's what it could be. This is the connect. Rameir says about Avshalom. Tosfos says that Avshalom is also on that list. That he doesn't go to hell, but he doesn't have a portion of the world to come. We're going to see not everyone agrees with Rameir, but it says about Rameir, he specifically made that his teacher should go to hell after he died, so he should be able to be part of the world to come. But in these kings means Achaz, who was the father of Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu also tried to do tshuva for his father. We learned that he dragged his body in the as a way of atonement for his father. The rabbis were not happy that he did that. But Chizkiyahu was a great righteous king, but his father was not. And so through Achazia was part of that whole family of Atalia. So he also wasn't, he doesn't go to hell, but he doesn't have a portion of the world to come. They're not going to live in the world to come, with the righteous. But they don't go to hell. And the reason why Reb Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Rameir that only the kings of Israel that it says about them that they did evil, that they fall into that category of people that are not judged, they don't go to hell, but they don't have a portion of the world to come. But King Solomon, or the final king of the house of David, Mibeis David, so people may think that Allah says that Solomon did bad in God's eyes when he didn't get rid of his wife's behaviors. His wives were bringing in idols, or what have you. So nevertheless, he says, no, that only the kings of Israel, but Solomon, of course, has a portion of the world to come, and so does Tzidkiyahu, the final king of David. The Gemara, Rashi continues, Achaz v'Achazia, so Mimalcha Yehuda, V'kimlu Shahir Shayim, that we learned that they were very wicked, both Achaz and Achazio, and therefore they don't go to hell, but they're not going to be resurrected in the time of the world to come. However, the question is, what about Aman and Yehoiakim? We find that they will live in the world to come. We're trying to figure out why. Ammon was the son of Menashe. So although we learned last week that Menashe, king of Yehuda, again, so we have Achaz is the grandfather. He's a bad king. Comes afterwards Chizkiyahu, who's the very righteous king that we learned a few weeks ago. God wanted to make Chizkiyahu Mashiach. He was so righteous. He taught Torah. So he fixes the mistakes of his father. His son is King Menashe, a horrible king. He's clearly on the list, according to some opinions, who doesn't have a portion of the world to come. And Menashe is he does tshuva, the Gemara says. So some people say maybe he does have a portion of the world to come. His son is Ammon. Ammon is a horrible king. We'll learn what he did. Yehoiakim is a horrible king. He's the son of Yeshayahu, a great righteous king. But nevertheless, Leichashiv, even though they're wicked, they're not considered on that list. We'll see why. The Gemara has a hard time understanding why, but the Gemara gives an answer why. So Reb Steinzat says, among the kings of Judah, that there were those who were completely wicked and sentenced to Gehenna, and those who were less wicked. In other words, Yehoiakim, I'm not sure why he adds Yehoiakim. I'm not sure where he gets that from. Yehoiakim is the king. He does tshuva then. These kings of Judah and Israel were delivered from Gehenna because they participated in the wars of the Jewish people and shared in their suffering. The merit of those actions granted them protection from hell, although they're not going to be part of the world to come. So even though they're not part of the world to come, they did have some credit because of because of the good deeds that they did, that they fought wars, although Achav also fought wars. I guess maybe it depends how bad they went. He says over here in the commentaries, they have pain because they can't be included in the world to come. They don't have the pain of hell. We know the famous Ramban, Nachmanides in Job says that when one reads the book of Job, one could think about, wow, that's horrible. It is horrible. Job went through tremendous suffering, the worst suffering. If children died, he lost everything, lost all his friends. I mean, he had a horrible life, Job, right? That's the book of Job. Everyone knows that. So the Ramban, Nachmanides says that as bad as that was, doesn't come close to how bad hell is. So sometimes that's why there's a concept of Yisurim. Sometimes, unfortunately, not that we justify it, but sometimes a person goes through Yisurim in this life not to have to suffer from the pains of hell. So he says that these kings, although they had pain, but they didn't have to be in hell. And again, what's the reason? Because they were engaged in saving lives by being kings, and they try to protect the interests of the Jewish people, at least in a physical sense, maybe not spiritually. And they fought the wars that they were supposed to fight. And they had pain when the Jewish people were in pain. So it means they were politicians, politicians. But they had politicians with a good intention. So therefore, they were also part of the world to come. I mean, they're not part of the world to come, but they don't go to hell. Okay, now the Gemara continues about Menashe. So Menashe again is a complicated person. Menashe is 55 years king. He knows his father's Chizkiyahu. He's taken, we learned last week, he was taken captive in Bavel by the Assyrians, put it in a boiling pot. He davens to God, he prays to God, whether the prayer was a manipulating prayer or not manipulating prayer. God listens to his tefillah. He makes a special passage, even though the angels don't want to let him. They try to prevent God, but the God listens, and he goes back, and he's 33 years. He pretty much does tshuva. But before that, most opinions is that this is before that. Some people say that after that, but either way, it says v'gam dam naki shavach Menashe har b'meod. Aside from idols, he also killed a lot of people. So he spilled a lot of. Asher milei es Yerushalayim peh lepeh levad michatase sheher, that the whole city is say full of blood, aside for the other sins he did, like the sins of the idols. His hara bein Hashem that he did outside, and besides that, he was a murderer. Say Hacham, meaning to say that here in Bavel that he killed a lot of people. What is that referencing to? Har Yeshaya. Yeshaya Hanavi, Isaiah, the prophet, the famous prophet Isaiah, who's the grandfather of Menashe. Isaiah again is from the house of the king. Was the royal family. He's a cousin, uncle. He's part of the mishpacha, the house of the king. He's a descendant of David. He becomes a prophet. He's prophesizing, and he's the prophet of redemption, but he's also the prophet of doom. Chazon Avai. We have the famous haftorah of Chazon. So he admonishes when he has to his family members. One of those people is his grandfather, his grandson, Menashe's king. He kills his grandfather. Menashe's grandfather. That's what it means. He's by killing the prophet, who was a great prophet. But moreover, how in the west, about Omri in Israel, which is west of Babylonia, right, of Iraq, they say Selim, that he didn't kill. Not talking about, not referencing killing his grandfather. We're talking about he made a statue, Masai Elif Bnei Adam, that was the weight of 1,000. The power, it means basically the ability. It took 1,000 people to carry this idol that he made. That's how big the idol was. And these 1,000 people that had to hold it, every day they died from holding from the weight of this idol. So literally every day, 1,000 people. So according to this, what does this mean? That Rabbi Bar says, "Shekula Shemesh Tzadik Echad Connect Kolem Kulei." That statement that Rabbi Bar says that the soul is like everyone. So that's the opinion that he killed Yeshaya. That's Mandam Yeshaya. According to the opinion that he killed Yeshaya, that's why the verse says, "V'gam dam naki shafach b'nasha har b'myoid." What does it mean? He spilled a lot of blood. He spilled valuable blood that's worth a lot of people, which is the prophet of Isaiah. But according to the people in the Eretz Yisrael, the opinion of the West, that's Marava means in Eretz Yisrael, he killed literally a lot of people. Okay, so Rashi says, again, this statue, he ended up putting the statue into the temple. It was, again, these are people that are just, they're angry. It's like, the world is, when the world is angry, the world is angry. They're angry people. They're looking to anger God. It says, you sunk in from the weight of this tremendous statue, tremendous idol, literally killed 1,000 people daily just from carrying it. So the Rashi says, according to the opinion that he killed Yeshaya. That's the idea of a tzaddik, a righteous person is like a lot of blood. It says that the whole Jerusalem was full of blood. It says it's as if, because of the soul of the tzaddik is so great, it's as if the whole city was taken down. Okay, we continue with this pesel, with the statue that Menashe made. It says pesel, which is singular. Psilim, and says statues in the plural. So what is it? Did he make one statue of other statues? So Rabbi Yochanan said, "B'tchila asalai parts of echad." Parts of is a image, the face. So first he made one face to the statue. In the end, he says he wasn't happy to give it one dimension face. He wanted it to be 4 dimensions, all 4 sides. Why? What was his motivation? Why did he have to add that all 4 sides should have a face of the statue, of the idol? So here, this is how twisted this guy was. He wanted God to see it from every angle. And every angle God's going to look at it, he's going to see a statue and get angry. So it means here you have a person, right? Think about it. He's not an apokryphos. What's an apokryphos? An apokryphos is a person who doesn't believe in God. He's not. If he didn't believe in God, why would he sit there making a statue of 4 sides? He knows God exists. He knows God is watching, and he's angry at God. He wants to anger God. So he's satisfied with one side of the statue to have an image of the idol. It should be from all 4. Whenever God looks at it, God's angry. It's called lahachis. You do things to anger God. It's sad and complicated at the same time. So he says, others say, the Maharsha says that he made it corresponding to the 4 sides of the chair, right? We know that the chariot that Yecheskel sees of God, and also Yeshaya saw the chariot, had different images on the chariot. So he wanted to show that I could also make images, right? So it says, "Vayasim is a pesel." It says in the Malachim, he put the statue the statue that he put in the house of God. He put it in the temple. This wasn't like he put it somewhere in his backyard. He put it in the temple. When God comes down to the temple, it's his home. So he puts in a statue. He wasn't satisfied to have it on the front of the statue, to have a parts of an image of an idol. He wanted wherever God is in the presence of, wherever God turns in his own home in the temple, he should see Menashe's idol. He says he put in the asherim, which are the kind of trees that people would worship once upon a time, the psilim, and he put in the statues. So it says plural. Which one was it? Did he put in a lot of statues or one statue? So the Saif Asim Menashe, he took the same statue but gave its face from 4 sides. Why? So like Rashi says, wherever God enters the sanctuary, so obviously mystical ideas. Tira parts of Kneged V'tichos. He should see anywhere he walks into the temple, from any gate God walks into, so say his presence floats into, he should see the image of the, he shouldn't, like if he comes in from the back gate, Hashem, maybe he won't see the face, he won't recognize right away that it's a statue. So God, it's like, again, it's not, by the way, it's not these contradictions are not reserved only for 2,500 years ago for King Menashe. Here again, we're talking about a person that was able to study Torah, the most complex issues of Torah. The Torah's called him 55 different ways. So he had tremendous knowledge about God and God's Torah, and he's looking lahachis from any angle. God, so there's nowhere you should see that Menashe is putting an idol in. Okay, so parts of he says is like the mask of a face. Okay, parts of it's a famous idea. Okay, so that's what Menashe did. Menashe went and put the idol in the temple. Again, we starting to see a little bit more why the Mishnah puts him on the list of people who don't have a portion of the world to come. Right? We're dealing with a person that's not just satisfied. You have to have weaknesses. Right, the weaknesses or desires or doesn't, selfishness. Here, the guy is motivated by angering God. It's not just that he doesn't want to have to do with God. He doesn't want to be restricted by the limitations of Torah. He knows Torah and he's looking to anger God. We'll see this. There are kings that emulated him even worse. Achaz is his grandfather. Again, Achaz is the father of Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu is the righteous king. The king God wanted to make the Mashiach. Menashe is the son. So Achaz is the grandfather of Menashe. So he says Achaz didn't have the chutzpah to put the statue inside the sanctuary. Hamid Ba'aliyah, he puts it on the roof of the temple. Shnemer ves hamizbachos asher al hagag haliyah asher al hagag al Achaz. It says that he put it on the roof. So then these are the old that were on the roof of the upper chamber of Achaz. Menashe mida beheichel. But Menashe wasn't satisfied. He put it in the sanctuary. He put it in the house of God. This is the same house that God tells King David and King Solomon, this is my home. This is my city, Jerusalem. I could have chosen any city. I chose Jerusalem, and this is the home that I chose. And Menashe says, yeah, is that right? I'm going to put a statue in your home, in your city. That's where I'm going to put my name. My name is going to be connected to this house and the city. So he doesn't care. He goes and he puts an idol there. Amain is the great-grandson of Achaz, the grandson of Chizkiyahu, the son of Menashe. So whatever kind of tshuva, again, I'm not sure. I remember hearing, I think, Rabbi Barawan saying that we just learned about the statue and that goes all together. But yeah, I think he said that happened after he It happened after it happened after he did tshuva. But either way, whatever he did tshuva or not, that tshuva didn't affect his son. His son was Ammon. Ammon was the next king. He's not satisfied to put a statue in the sanctuary. He goes to God's private chambers, the Holy of Holies. Holy of Holies that had the ark. The ark was still there then. The ark is only hidden under the rule of Yeshayahu, the last pretty much righteous king. We see clearly that although there was a few break stops, but from Chizkiyahu downwards, the king of Yehuda were totally spiraling to be as bad as the kings of Israel. But at least there were stops. And the kings of Israel, there were no good kings. Chizkiyahu was a very righteous king. Yeshayahu was a very righteous king. We just said before Tzidkiyahu, even the one that was king and is viciously murdered by the Babylonians, he was called Tzidkiyahu. He was a tzaddik. But we learned last week that he didn't admonish the people. But he himself wasn't a horrible king. But Ammon was. So he brings a statue into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. Shenemar, he brings a point to support a verse to support that he did that. I'm not exactly 100% sure how this verse supports that, but either way, it says Kikotzer Hamatza Mihistareya. For it means the matzah is the beds. I guess the Kodesh Kodashim is like the bedroom. It says for the bed is too short for spreading, and the covering too narrow for when he gathers himself. Basically, there's no space in the Holy of Holy for both God and idol. It's like a bedroom, It's like putting something into your bed. It's putting something in your bed. There's no space in the bed for both God and this idol. So the Gemara explains, Maki Kotzer Matz Mihis Dareya, the bed is too short for spreading. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmoni. Rabbi Shmuel the son of Nachmoni says, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, the name of Yonasan. Ki Kotzer Matz Zeh Milishtarer Alav Shnei Re'em Ke'echad. He says, for his bed is too narrow for two colleagues to spread upon it together, as it's impossible for that the service of God and idol worship will coexist there. Couldn't do it anymore. We had idols, Nash and Ammon, they're putting idols in the Heich. You can't serve God and idols at the same time. What's Masechet Sarah? So Rabbi, what does it mean that the coverings are too narrow? Masechet is a covering. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Rabbi Yonasan, again, Rabbi Shmuel, son of Nachmani, says the name Rabbi Yonasan. He have a mati lahaikra havikabachi. When he would come to this verse, he would cry. Why would he cry? Mishikasa by kindness kaneid mehayam. Right? We learn in Tehillim 33. The one who gathers the waters of the sea, that he could gather in all the water. There's no space for God and the idols. God who owns the space is now feeling claustrophobic with other interests. God, obviously, none of this means literally. This is not to be that God has no space. It's God wants to be found within us. This when it says, for instance, a person has ego. Ego is a form of idol worship. So when you have ego, God says, I also have no space. What's mean no space? But you've made no space for me in you. The temple is a representation of the space that we have for Hashem. So God's saying you can't have an idol. What do we see from all these Gemaras? The Gemaras are really, it's not, if you could talk about Chizkiyahu, you could talk about Menashe, Ammon, Achaz, you could talk about these kings, but if you second and apply it to yourself, obviously not on that level. But there's different places that we place our own idols, So Achaz puts it on the roof, keeps the house clean. Menashe brings it into the Heichel, in the sanctuary. And Ammon brings it into the bedroom, into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, in the deepest, most private places. How penetrated are we by things that are zar? What's avodah zara mean? Avodah zara means a foreign service. The things that are foreign should be foreign to a Jew. It can be mindset, anxieties. It can be things that you're getting out of your amun and bitachon, belief and trust in God, trusting other things. How deep does that penetrate? Does it penetrate your roof? Does it penetrate your sanctuary? Does it penetrate your Holy of Holies? The things that are supposed to be totally separate for God. Ammon brings the pestle into the Holy of Holies. God says, I can't have space. You can't trust something else and trust God at the same time. These are, again, it's brought down in the Gemara that someone who lives in Chutz La'aretz is avodah zara b'tahara. What does it mean that person, he or she, serves God idols in a pure way? Anything that's foreign, anytime you have a foreign agenda, that's avodah zara. B'tahara, it's not exactly, you're not bowing down to an idol, but it's a concept. So again, we're talking about other kings and judge them, You ask yourself, where does the watered down version of an idol of that may be possible that you worship, person worships? Is it possible you have such a thing, and where is it? Is it on your roof? Is it in your bedroom? Is it in your chamber? So he says, you can't have the Shechina, the holy presence of God, and this image of the idol. Mat Beis Hamikdash. I said that's why I didn't understand the pasuk, because we just said the pasuk about Ammon, who says that he brought it not just into the temple, he brought in the Holy of Holies. Tasla Masechet Sarah makes it a small covering, like a woman. Like here, Rashi learns the word Sarah means the person brings a tzara into the house. Those days when you had halachically, a person who's married to two women, they're called a tzara to each other. They're not trusted, because obviously they are fighting for the attention of the husband. And there's different laws when it comes. So the other woman, each one is the other woman. To the next, it's called a tzara. Obviously, it's not a pleasant experience for a husband to be married to two women. Okay, and so we learned about the different idols that were placed in the different places of the temple. Again, the reason we learned this Gemara, Aaron asked a few times, what does this mean to me? So again, you're supposed to try to personalize to everyone to their level. If there's something that needs attention, that's the Shar B'Tachon. Shamuna talks about these things. And Shar B'Tachon, the Rebbeinu B'chai, talks about these ideas of that's what it means. There's no. Okay, so we continue with Aches. Let's go a little further. Aches bitlas avoda. He stopped the service of the temple, and v'chasem es Torah. He sealed the Torah. It brings us a verse to support this. It says, "Sar to Uda, bind up the testimony, chasem Torah lemudai, seal the Torah among my disciples." So he basically. He tried to stop people from learning Torah. Again, Chizkiyahu, his son, had to start again from the beginning. And that's why when we talk about the achievement of King Chizkiyahu, it wasn't like he taught Torah in the yeshiva. He had to make the yeshiva. Achis stopped the learning of Torah. Achis, again, is the father of Chizkiyahu. He stops the learning of Torah. He stops the service of the temple. Chizkiyahu has to start from the beginning. So therefore, when you look at the achievements of Chizkiyahu, we understand why God was making the Mashiach on a single-handed. He revived Torah study on the highest level, inheriting a kingdom, but his father did the exact opposite. But then his son comes, Menashe. What does Menashe do? Menashe koder es hasgores. He takes out he rips out the names of God from the Torah. He doesn't stop the idol worship of the altar, destroys the altar. Ammon goes even further. Again, but Ammon is the one who brings the statue into the Holy of Holies. Sarf has a Torah. He burns the Torah. So Menashe takes out the names of God from the Torah. That's why we don't learn that Ammon taught Torah 55 ways. Menashe is the person who wants to take out this. What does it mean he takes out the name of God from the Torah? He's able to give a shiur, a class, to teach 50 days in the most complex parts of Torah. He says, take the name of God. Let's talk about intellective Torah. Right? Ammon says, I don't get Torah. He burns the whole. How you see it? Different explanations what he did over here. This is usually a spider. The Hel Samam Samizbeach is the outcome. Because he destroyed the altars, therefore the altar was full of spider webs. Because there was no Samam is also people. Whatever he defiled the altar either by lack of service or putting things they shouldn't have put on it. Aches hit this serva. Aches again allowed. So again, everything is when there's a fall. We see this in our time in certain ways, but when there's a fall in religious moral and in Torah study in God fearing. There's no parav, there's an expression in the yeshiva, parav means not that, it's not milk, it's not meat, it's just something that's kind of, I want to fit in every situation. Parav is treif. Parav is itself not kosher. You have to make a choice. And so there's no, you can't just say, I'm going to be a good person, but just get God out of it. So eventually the moral laws break down. And what does Achiz do? He allowed engage in sexual intercourse with no more limitations in the Torah that says who you can marry, you can't marry. He broke down all the barriers of the laws of sexuality. And Menashe, who's the great of Achiz, that's not for him. That his father went and broke down the laws of sexuality. Menashe he has relations with his own sister, and not only does he wants to go incest well. Here we're gonna Rashi learns what's Helas. What that from Ach. Samamis, according to most opinions, is a spider. Is Kurei Achvish is a spider Shabbat avoided because there's a spider webs on the altar. Although we said he destroyed the mizbeach, the altars. There was so absolute no service on the holy altar webs. What does it mean that allowed to engage in forbidden relatives? That he said there's no more limitations in the laws of relationship. Rabbi too quickly he goes and he's very into animals. That he goes into the Samos is a gecko of lizards that are in the Mediterranean. Geckos are found in mountains, but often in homes. They are able kind of things. The unusual, along with certain folk beliefs, led it to be considered revolting in ancient times. Therefore, sacrificing a gecko on the altar of it is contempt for God. So this holds like others that kind of a lizard is a way of dishonor of desecrating the altar. Many commentators hold that the samamit is a non-kosher bird, perhaps a parrot, or that it was a monkey. According to the Rambam, he put a monkey on the altar. Even those who explain that it is a type of lizard agree that Christ, an impure creature on the altar in a display of contempt for God. Again, Rashi doesn't learn that. Rashi learns that the lack of service created spider webs, but we want to try to find different animal ways that he desecrated the temple. But this actually, this idea, we'll go a little further. This idea is brought up many times in this idea about the mummies, the spect. So this is samamis biyadam titafes v'hibehechel hamelech. Talks about that there's love of godliness. You could have a samamonis. When there's a spider, when there's an insect, there's something impure, the king is so great that it doesn't matter. That's in Chassidus, that's a representation of the concept of God's limitless, when like the prophet says, Ochi Esav Yaakov, Esav and Yaakov. There's a love of God that judge, doesn't look at you can't offend God, you can't do sins. So the samamis, the insect or the spider is in the Heichal Melech, is in the Heichal of the king, in the palace of the king, but who's paying attention to that? In Chassid, they use that as an expression for levels of godliness that's beyond judgment. Okay. Amain Baal Imai. Again, so Menashe has relations with his sister. Achaz permits forbidden marriages, forbidden relationships. Again, it starts from the corruption of Torah to the corruption of family. Amain satisfied with that. He has relations with his Amain here ba'ashma. It says he increased his guilt. Reb Elazar, as the Torah once says again, do more than Menashe. So Menashe, names of God of the Torah, turns the because Menashe has relations with the sister, he has relations. So it says his mother, who's Menashe's wife, I'm assuming, obviously, one of his wives, says to him, I mean, obviously, he raped his mother. He didn't have relations in a consensual. So it says she said to him when he came to abuse her, to rape her. It says you're not going to even enjoy it. Who has enjoyed a relation once? The place that you come from, going to try to have relations. The Amrullah, he says, you're right. The only reason I'm doing this is anger God. You're right. I have no pleasure in this. Again, the twistedness of these people. So this is another way for me to anger God. So Rashi explains, a person satisfied. A person doesn't have a desire. That means you're unsatisfied. Doesn't have a desire that's not talking relationships. A person's always looking for something different. Any metav say makkah before. Doesn't make sense that a person would want to have relations with his mother. Here, okay, Reb Steinsaltz quotes that from Tayyam, Aaron has letters of aim. So he's connected to, that's the hint, isn't it? There was was the idea of relations with his mother. Just one more piece. Okay, so let's just read quickly over here. So we have sorry, that's the wrong one. So we have, okay, we talked about Praise, which is the son of Yosam, the father of Chizkiah. We have Menashe, which is the son of Chizkiah, Aman, the son of Menashe. Aman, as would have the person who's the most, burning the idol in Holy of Holies with his mother, raping his mother, is the most righteous of kings. Ashio. He has a righteous son. But the worst of them all is Yehoiakim. He burns Eicha. He tries to murder Yirmiyahu. There's nothing good that Yehoiakim. And eventually his son Yehoiachin, which actually ends up doing some sort of truth, he gets taken to Babylon, and then the last final king is Tzidkiyahu. Yeshayahu is kind of the last good king. From when the prophet Yirmiyahu comes in Chevra, this is pretty over. Okay, so it says like this. Yehoiakim, just do this last piece. Yehoiakim has he wants to outdo everyone else. Achais puts the idol on the roof. Asha puts it in the Amen puts it in the Holy of Holies. Yehoiakim says, Kamei largoizi, the people before me, they didn't know how to anger God. Klum anu tzricha. He says, we don't need anything from God. What's the God could give us is light. Everything else we could be self-sustained. We need light, we need the sun. So he says, you know what? Take away your sun. Yesh lanu zahavim. Zahav parvim is kind of very bright gold. He had some idea of bright gold as a source of light. Sun will the sun. We use it, that will light. He said to him, we learned before that Yehoiakim was the people weren't so corrupt. He was corrupt. Tzidkiyahu, people were the Sanhedrin. Again, his father Shayo. So the rabbi said, the gold is God. You're saying you're going to replace the sun with gold. Zav comes to God. That God created gold. So what you're trying to make a shtick over here that you're going to replace. You make the gold. You didn't make the gold. God created the gold. So Amar Lahem, he says you're right, but that's too bad. He gave it to us. Shemaim Hashem v'aretz nasan le'yadam. Right? They're quoting verses at each other. It's complicated. Verse, it says that God has the heaven, that's the sun, but he gave us this world. Okay, that's just we're going to stop over. Rashi says, Kamai la yadu largoize. He says, Mishonim, the earlier kings, Shulenu before us, they didn't know how to really anger. The way I was able to do it, Yehoiakim says. What does God say? Is he right? Let him take his son. We'll replace it with gold. This kind of parva gold was very bright. So the people of his generation, like Rashi says, the bnei dara tzadikim hayu. He lived in a righteous time. His people were righteous. It wasn't like he was this corrupt king with righteous people in the tsaris. The Amran stock with Yehoiakim in Iskar Daite. God was going to. Yehoiakim was so pointing to God that he was going to destroy the world. We said that last week. Why did he destroy the world? Because the tzaddikim of them. All right, the Gemara is going to stop over here. The Gemara is going to continue with this. It's not going to get any easier, but we have some really fascinating Gemaras going forward. The idea of Micha, we didn't even get there. I thought we would get much further today. Pesel Micha, of the Knas Zarchim, Micha, as bad as he was a person that people always could find a warm bed and a meal in his home and in his house of worship. Micha will learn about who he was. The Gemara actually go into the next thing we're going to learn about is why aren't these people Yehoiakim and Ammon on the list of people that don't have a portion of the world to come? So we'll learn why. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. Again, these are ideas of these Gemaras are not to learn about people that are Rishayim or wicked, but to try in any kind of way to try to understand how to better ourselves in our own service of Hashem and our own understanding and bitachon and emunah, etc. All right, everyone. Laila Tov. Thank you for joining. Chodesh Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye.
Yep. Oh, who's the host here? Oh, wow. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah. All right. So, we still have a bunch of us on here.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about?
Who is AW?
Hi. My name is Ami Weisel. I just got your text message now, like a minute ago, but I guess
Oh,
it's...
sorry about that. I know. It's every Sunday through Thursday night from 11 p.m. to midnight Eastern Daylight Time. It just takes me an hour to
Yeah.
everyone. So I go through different things, and but so just save the links. It's just every Sunday through Thursday from
So
11 to.
Monday's the question and answer.
Uh-huh.
You ask the question.
Yes. Monday's Q&A. So Monday's Q&A night. Like Tuesday is Gemara night. Wednesday is
Shabbat.
I forgot.
Shabbat.
Shabbat. Thursday I think is the Sichos of the Rebbe.
Yep.
And Sunday is some other mystical, like a Kabbalistic concepts on Sunday. I can't remember either exactly what Sunday.
Where is everyone from?
Yeah,
I'm from New York City, the Upper West Side of Manhattan.